It's recording.
Okay, so welcome to the Global Network webinars. Today we have with us our colleague Luca Di Gennaro Splendore from the University of Malta, who will be talking about the topic Democracy Dies in Darkness Without Official Statistics. My name is Alexander Loschke, and I will be moderating this webinar together with my colleagues Sean Lowe and Panya Yu. So in a world increasingly shaped by data, the importance of official statistics often remains in the shadows, even within NSOs. Yet these statistics, like employment rates, gross domestic product, data about the pandemic, are the lifeblood of democracy. They influence policymaking, media narratives, and electoral choices. So in his talk today, Luca will explore the vital nexus between official statistics and democracy and shows the quantitative relationship between political regime type and the capacity of national statistical systems, and hence the statistical performance of national statistical offices. Let me introduce our speaker. So Luca is a Marie Curie Fellow at the Malta University. He is a former staffer of the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees and of the National Statistical Office of Malta. He was a statistical election expert consultant for EU and OSCE election observation missions around the world. And Luca holds a PhD in statistics from the University of Bologna. So before I hand over to Luca, let me first mention a few things. So we will first hear the presentation before we will have the Q&A session at the end. But please feel free to write your questions and comments into the meeting chat at any time. And then during the Q&A session, it would be nice if you could ask your question yourself. Otherwise, we can ask the question for you, but it's always nicer if you ask the question yourself. As always, this Global Network webinar will be recorded or is being recorded and will be made available on the Global Network of Data Officers and Statisticians at yammer.com/UNstats. We invite you to continue the discussions on the Global Network after the webinar. And now I would like to hand over to you, Luca. The floor is yours.
I want to start this webinar with something I read in the Italian newspaper 1 month ago. Basically, there was a manipulation of data. Maybe you know Italy has 20 regions, and these regions are very powerful in the health system. They manage a hospital and so on. Then I repeat just what I read in the newspaper. During the COVID, then the president of region were in charge to the main issue. As you remember, in the beginning of the pandemic, we were short on vaccine, and basically the central government in Rome, the Italian central government, asked data all over the Italian regions. Then every president needed to say the people over some age, the person that were with the COVID, casualty, and so on. This newspaper report interception, a call. Basically, the police listened this call between the chief of staff that was in charge to produce the data, the president about this figure, the figure of casualty and demographic figure. And the chief of staff was a funny conversation because the chief of staff called the president to say, President, what did you do? The police listened this conversation and was reported in the newspaper. He said, what did you do? You you manipulated the data, but the chief of staff said, I already manipulated, I already inflated this number. And the president replied, why you didn't tell me? Then this is a case, a small anecdote of manipulation of data that is, I think, it's worth to give some comment. I have for these topics 3 small comments. The first one, that always the authority that produce and disseminate data need to be independent and autonomous of the government or of potential conflict of interest. The second thing is that data that are produced and disseminate in ethically, in ethics way, in this case, they cheat, they manipulate, they inflate the number. If the data are produced ethically, are already with better quality. And the last, and then I will open the slide. I will start with, let's say, my presentation, my standard presentation. The last is that now policymaker, in some case, they don't take decision. The decision are taken by the data. The case of vaccination, but we have other cases where the vaccination, in this case, where the repartition was made by the numbers, the figure of demographic figure and casualty figure. Something that, in my opinion, also happened with the case of SDG. Already with SDG, the statistician they have a very important rule, and they can influence the policy. Anyway, I think now at this point you should see my my slide. My presentation, as Alexander says, democracy dies in the darkness without official statistics. Part of this title that is very, let's say, sexy is a copy by a US journal that the Washington Post under the title say democracy dies in the darkness. And I take advantage of my position to say thank you to Alexander also for the invitation, for the organization, also to all the team for this seminar, but also for the other seminar, to organize this network for data statistics officer that I think is very useful. And now I start the presentation also to thank Horizon Europe. I am Marie Curie Fellow. This is very important because they pay my salary. As you can understand from my accent, I'm Italian, but I work in the Malta University. Malta is a small country, European Union country between Italy and let's say North Africa, Libya, and Tunisia. Today, I want to address basically 2 questions. The first one is if there is a quantitative relation between the democracy and the official statistics. And the second one is more general. If we can organize in a democratic country, we can organize election campaign without unofficial statistics. I start with the first question that in some way is the more original contribute, because this relationship in some way is mentioned many times more in qualitative way, never in quantitative way. And then in the next slide, there is a simple graph when a scatter plot, where we can see on the left the democracy index, and down the statistical performance indicator. Basically, the democracy index is an index made by the journal The Economist, that maybe you know, that give a score to every country in the world from 0 to 10 about the level of democracy. This index is, of course, is no academic index. Is produced every year, and is a composite index that take in consideration many things, like the freedom of press, like the how they organize the election, the participation, the turnout, the election turnout, the separation of the different power of the country, take in consideration different things. Sometimes are clear number, like the turnout, other time, like political culture, they use some survey or expert assessment. And then down, I have the statistical performance indicator that is made by World Bank, and assess the performance, the statistical performance of a country. Again, a little bit like the democracy index, in different aspect of the statistical system of a country. Then there is an analysis of the law, there is an analysis of the National Statistical Office, there is an analysis of in this index is included, maybe you know, the Open Data Watch index. Then is the analysis of the data that the National Statistical Office published in the web page. How you can see from this figure, there is all the country are close to the line. This means that there is a strong correlation, and also we can observe that, for instance, the most democratic country in the world is also the country that has a better statistical performance indicator. In this case, this graph refer to 2022 was Norway. But we can see that we have many Northern European countries. We can see Sweden, Iceland, but also New Zealand, Switzerland, and this it's interesting because I will show later some example. But this correlation, this idea is respect in every continent in the world. If, for instance, we go in Africa, the most democratic country is Mauritius, and Mauritius has the best statistical performance indicator in Africa. If we move in Asia, Japan, South Korea are the best democracy, and also they have the best statistical system. As well, I will show later, America, the best democracy in the Latin America are Uruguay and Costa Rica. They have as well the best statistical performance indicator. Now, in the next slide, I show only the full democracy. Basically, if in the democratic index you have a score better than 8, from 8 to 10, according with this index, this classification, you are full democracy. And as you can see, the country I mentioned before, for instance, Mauritius in Africa, Costa Rica, Uruguay in America, and you can see that also in this full democracy there is a consistency of this idea, this correlation. The democratic index divide the country in 4 categories: full democracy, imperfect democracy, from 5 to 8 or something like that. Under 5, then you have a hybrid regime, and the last rank is authoritarian country. Of course, probably you are a statistician, you know better than me that this index always has a subjective degree, a degree of subjectivity, and also of course these are very complex concepts. Like there is no unique definition of democracy. Of course, there is no unique definition of statistical performance. Of course, there is no a unique way to measure democracy or statistical performance. What I tried also with other colleagues that maybe are connected, what I try is also to use a different index. I can show we have a very similar result. Now, in the next slide, I will present the situation in Latin America, and then I will present the figure, the number, the simple correlation I calculated. This is are only Latin America and the Caribbean country. And you can see Chile, Costa Rica, Uruguay are the best democracy, and also they have kind of the best national statistical system. You can also see that Mexico, for instance, has I was in Mexico just one month ago, has a very strong statistical system, maybe thanks to the INEGI, but in the last years the democracy is very good, but has a small inflation. This was a little bit the visualization, the graphic of this data. Now I will present the number, the correlation that maybe you know. The first correlation, 69 on the left, is referred to these graphs, this scatter plot I present before. Is the 69? This is referred to 2022, but in the previous years, unfortunately, we have I think 7 years. in the previous year is 70 or 71. Then is slightly decreasing this number. Here, 69, we have a very strong correlation. The maximum is 1%, but you use a correlation, you know that these are very important number for correlation. Then I keep always the democratic index, and I calculate the correlation with the gender data compass. Maybe you know, is a new data set. We have only the 2023, and again is made by Open Data Watch, and is the analysis of the web page of the National Statistical Office. If there is gender disaggregation and also other minority disaggregation, if they are present, if there is the time series, more data you have, more from longer period, you have a better score. Also here, we have a fantastic correlation. 41 is much less than 69, but 41 is anyway a very strong correlation. 41 in the middle, and then on the right we have a 56. That is the correlation between the democratic index again and the open data inventory, Odin data, always referring to 2022. Taking consideration that Odin open data inventory is already included in the statistical performance indicator. This I think about my presentation is the more innovative part, and the quantitative part of this probably is also the main message I want to give you today. Now I start, I did a research around the international organization, around the literature and the academic literature and the other sources to look for this relationship between democracy and official statistics. Unfortunately, this relation is not really studied in the literature. My colleagues, Moshe, that maybe is online, we work how the political regime can affect the statistical performance of a country. This is, I think, the best sentence I found in my research. In a democratic society, the independence of official statistics has the same status of freedom of speech. Then has, in my opinion, the same status of the justice system, of the parliament, of many organizations that defend the democracy and the constitution. This, I think, was a former director of the Finland National Statistical Office. My feeling, this, how you can understand, is the second part of the presentation of today. I try to answer if we can organize election without without official numbers. In my opinion, I work a couple of years in the National Statistical Office Malta. Maybe some of my former colleagues are online. And my feeling that sometimes even inside the National Statistical Office, we don't have the awareness of the importance of the National Statistical Office. Yeah, this is a very interesting report. Is not a statistical report, is a report of the Bannett Institute, that is an English English institute. I think it's very interesting. Maybe, as you know, I'm only a poor statistician, but maybe you know that in UK there is not a written constitution. Then this report listed the constitutional guardians, then the guardians of the democracy of the UK system. Of course, there is the government, there is the prime minister, the minister, the general attorney, the cabinet, the lord. There are different institutions, but also you can see down. This is the map I took from this report. There is also the UK Statistics Authority. It is mentioned a couple of times in this report. This was a suggestion of my colleague Ray. And then, of course, we are in UN. We in the introduction of the fundamental principle of official statistics that now is 30 years that are there. There is a mention to democratic society. And maybe this is was also no easy negotiation. Also, National Statistical Office are crucial for SDG data. They will produce, they will have, as I told before, they will have incredible importance to implement the policy. Maybe you know already, SDG 17 is referring to the law of National Statistical Office, of statistics of every country, the production of these statistics. And maybe the statistical performance indicator will be the SDG 17. Then there are very great, let's say, academic person and politician and science that they mention the statistics. There is, maybe you know, Ronald Fisher, the great English statistician that mentioned in when he was president of the Statistical Society, mentioned the statistics and democracy. There is a Popper that maybe his is a best book, most famous book, Open Society, and its enemy mentioned that we need independent structure to counterbalance, to face the government. And here you can see Keynes, the great economist, that his background was statistics, was probability, that in the 1940 he said very hard that government, they produce data in unscientific and obscurantist way. And they consider to produce statistics just a waste of money. And then I'm going to conclude. I promised to Alexander to be in time. And I am in time. I have just 2 slides left. This slide, I don't want to go in the details. This is a short list of official statistics under attack. The message of this slide is basically that, in my opinion, these are my feeling. I know maybe it's no scientific approach, but in my opinion, most of the population, they don't know what is official statistics. They don't know if it's public, it's private. They don't know. But when politicians they go to the government, maybe they attack the official statistics. Because the government sometimes they feel threatened by this figure. Then this is only a short list, but we have many cases in democracy and not that these are the official statistics is under attack. And then this is the last slide. My message is that we need to be more aware, first statistician, of the importance of the official statistics and how is crucial for our country, the political regime, and all the situation. This is not only my feeling, but for instance, there is no scientific literature on that. There is no debate on that among statisticians and among policy makers. The little discussion there is, the few articles that I read on that are made by sociology. For instance, there is an interesting article made by academic of Saragossa University and the National Statistical Office of Brazil that say that official the production of data in the beginning was a tool for the government to check the population, and now is the opposite. Another thing that we should also take in consideration is who produced the data. In many continents, there are trends where, for instance, the central bank or some minister produced data more than the National Statistical Office. And as I mentioned in the beginning, also the national, during the COVID, the data were not produced by National Statistical Office. They were not disseminated by National Statistical Office. And last thing, governability. There, I am starting to work also with colleagues about the relationship between official standards statistical performance and the governability. This seems higher than 70%. Then also governability, of course, is really connected with this data. And then I say thank you, and I am happy to receive your question or comment or suggestion or critique. And I want to just point out that I am very in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luca. Yeah, you really on time with your the length of your presentation. Thanks so much for giving this presentation. I think it's really important discussion about the link between yeah, I would say the political regime and the performance of statistics. So Maybe we can have now some discussion about this topic, and I would like to encourage everyone to, if you have a question, please raise your hand. That would be great. And then, or if you're a little bit shy or you cannot talk right now, please put your question into the meeting chat, and then we can take it from there. So I see one colleague has already the hand up. It's Omar. Omar, maybe you can introduce yourself, where you work, or your affiliation, and ask your question. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Professor Luca for this great presentation. My name is Omar. I am a social demographer at the Institute of Statistics of Djibouti. It's a very great and timely topic, really, because it's something that we always ask ourselves here in my country, of course. And I was wondering, when you were talking about the link between official statistics and democracy, one of the reasons why these discussions never occur is maybe, and I may be wrong, it's maybe because after the countries in the developing world have gained independence, the West, or the more advanced and developed countries, didn't want to discuss the importance of this topic because of what happened during the colonization, etc. So I feel like, even if I heard this discussion also in academia, whenever we talk about this subject, the rule of law, democratic governance, countries from my part of the world always bring the discussion of colonization in the table, and that makes it difficult to have a constructive debate and discussions around this topic. And I think it's really important, because we cannot talk about human rights, individual rights, without independent official statistics, etc. So I was just wondering what you thought about that. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks, Omar. Luca, how do we want to do it? Do we want to take several questions and you answer them one by one, or
Yes.
you want to react directly? It's up to you.
As you want.
Okay, let's maybe take two questions, and then so there's another question actually in the chat. So it's a question by Timos Papadopoulos from the University of Cyprus. So I will just read it out. Thank you for this informative presentation that addressed several concerns about the use of statistics and raised many more. My question is this: how does data on the Statistical Performance Index and democracy reflect the evaluation of vital social services, such as high-quality health and education provision? For instance, how should we evaluate the democratic right of a patient to not have to wait on a long waiting list for a heart operation, or the right of a student to study at their local school in such a correlation? So this is a question from Timos. So maybe you can take those two, and then we continue with other questions. Thanks.
Yes. About Omar, I would say that my work go in this direction that he mentioned. I mean, to have now a quantitative explanation, a quantitative to prove a quantitative relation between the democracy and the official statistics, we can present a data to enforce our idea about this relation. I don't know if I full reply to his question, but I think this is a step to have the quantitative proof is a step to in the direction that Omar said. About Timothy, I think is from Cyprus. I think it's a very interesting question. I think the easy answer is that no, I don't reply to that. But yes, we can put in, we can found an index on the health system, for instance, put in correlation with the statistical performance indicator to study more in the details the question that is very relevant of Timothy. I would answer like that. Then there was a previous question of Omar about Karl Popper. I think it's the same Omar of Djibouti. Yes, Karl Popper is very interesting, but also, yes, there are mention of Friedrich von Hayek on that. He push on the national on the independence of the statistical office.
Thanks, Luca. So we have a couple of questions more coming up in the chat, but I also see the hand up. I think it was Habib from UNSD. Habib, yeah, please come in.
Thank you, Alex. And thank you, Luca, for this very interesting presentation. So my name is Habib Khan. I work in the UN Statistics Division. So the first thing, I agree with our colleague Omar that this is a very timely topic. Because it's timely because we see like a rise of anti-democratic sentiment all around the world, right? And there is more and more pressure. So it's the deterioration of democracy often starts with weakening of institutions. And one of this institution is the statistical system. And you have listed, like you have a list of cases where the statistical system came under pressure from the, say, undemocratic governance. I can think a few of the examples myself. My question is, if in a situation where there's a democratic country, but it's moving towards authoritarianism, which is the case in many countries, what should the statistical system do? What can they do to preserve their independence? Or what would be your advice for a statistical system to work in that kind of environment? Also, what can the user community do? Because now I see there is growing. So one thing is the statistical data journalism, let's say. There's more and more data journalism. There's also more and more data activism. I see cases where the government pressured the statistical system to publish something which is very out of touch with the reality. And users, researchers, they basically beat back on it with their own analysis. What is your advice on for the user community in cases where democracy is deteriorating? Thank you.
Thanks, Habib. Let's add maybe another question. I see Hans has also put a question in the chat. Hans, if you want, you can unmute yourself now and ask it yourself. Otherwise, I'll do it. Please go ahead, Hans.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
No, it's about this cause and effect. As we all know, it's not the same as correlation. So I just, you indicated that democracy does not necessarily cause a good statistical system, and of course not the other way around, even if we would want to. But are there other factors that you want to mention or consider that are correlated with both democracy and the statistical system? In the text, in my question, I mentioned, for example, a general trust in government, etc. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm really struggling with my computer right now with an unmute button. So maybe you can take those two questions,
Yes.
Luca, and then we make another round of questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the question about Habibur. I don't know if I pronounce well your name. Sorry if not. Of course, probably you already answered. I mean, I think it's very important that civil society can create a system to check the data. For instance, Open Data Watch, of course, is a big international organization, but also we can have a national organization on that. Also, I think when it's very important when we are in a safe moment of democracy to take advantage to do a great law of statistics, which we need. That is not a joke. I know it's very difficult to do a law, but we need to think when we are in democracy to produce a law that defend the National Statistical Office for the budget, for the recruitment system, to protect the autonomy and the independence of the National Statistical Office for future bad period. And also another tool we can use, every regional, not every, but a lot regional organization, they say they pretend to have an independent statistics, or if you want to be part, for instance, of European Union, or you want to be part of OECD, you need to prove many things, but also to have an independent National Statistical Office. For instance, I know that Costa Rica National Statistical Office had dramatically improved because Costa Rica wanted to enter in the OECD. I don't know, probably the most correct answer is that I don't know to answer your question, but I think we need to go in this direction. In the, let's say, like the sailor, when you go in the sea, also if it's calm, you need to prepare to the storm. Then if the storm doesn't come, good. And then in the good moment, we need to try to support the National Statistical Office to it's important that the people, the population understand the importance. Even the National Statistical staff need to understand the importance and go in this direction. I don't know if they are online, for instance, and then I give the floor back. In the Dominican Republic, now is a democratic situation, and they want to change the law, because the law of statistics in Dominican Republic is 1959, that was under the dictator Trujillo. And now they want to change also to give a symbolic thing, that now the law of statistics is under the democracy. About Hans, of course, Hans is a very interesting question. I'm working on that, to work on causation. I would say that we have a strong correlation. It clearly is in my opinion, clearly is a democratic system can create a good statistical performance, and maybe this good statistical performance can help the democracy. Cannot be that a good national statistical system creates a good democracy. Then the direction is clear. Of course, the data and as you know better than me, with this, let's say, economic data index, to prove clearly the causation is not easy. But I work on that.
Thank you. Thanks, Luca. I see your image a little bit frozen. Maybe you can try to switch off and on your camera again. So let's go for another round of questions. So first I saw the hand up of Moshe. Moshe, can you please state your affiliation and ask your question?
Okay. I'm a full professor at the University of Haifa, Israel. And I've known Luca for many years when we both professors at Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona. And now we work on this subject as well. And my comment is as follows. I've been listening to some questions here about the person from Cyprus. I'm sorry if I forgot the name. Statistics deals with data. Now, any data in any regime is not a complete set of what we would like to have. Basically, we all see truncated distributions. When I mean truncated, I mean that part of the data we don't observe at all. A simple example is COVID-19. When a country wants to order vaccines, it has to know about the number of sick people that will need it. How does the country know sick people? Well, if people go to the doctor and say, listen, I have these and these symptoms, can you check me? However, they take a chance that if these symptoms indeed point to COVID-19, that person will be put in a room that he cannot see other people for that certain period of time. Since he is afraid of that, he will not go to ask the doctor whether his symptoms imply COVID-19. So we don't know him. We don't see this person in the distribution. If this would be random, nothing would happen to statistical properties. However, that person decides endogenously not to show up and present his problem. This immediately implies that the distribution, not only that it is truncated, but it is endogenously so. And all the story about error terms and distributions start floating. This is first thing about data. Think also about unemployment, such a usual data. Unemployment, there's a definition, those who look for a job and don't get it. But what about the fact that I don't look for a job? Because in my neighborhood coffee shop, I sit with other guys and they all tell me that they look for jobs and didn't get it. So I said, why bother? So I don't go. So I endogenously decide not to look for a job. So not only that I don't see you in the unemployment statistics, I don't know why. I mean, whether it's endogenous or not. So these are problems that plague the data all over. This is one thing. Then the guy from Cyprus rightly said something about quality. How can we measure quality of health insurance, etc., etc.? You can even go basic than that. GDP. How you compare countries' GDP? In one country which is very Catholic and abortions are not allowed and they are performed illegally, they will not be registered in the GDP. Does this mean that their GDP is lower than other countries? So that a host of problems one has to take. Luca and I right now in this respect about democracy are aware of causality problems. And we try to solve these problems. Now, causality is a new, relatively subject in computer science. And that's why I made a switch from economics to computer science. All the models that exist and on which two guys got Nobel Prize last year, I think it was Imbens and the other one, they assume monotonicity. For them, the world is monotone. Well, as far as I know a little bit about the world, nothing is monotone and may be affected by context. So we need to put context. So I urge some people to look for my new paper about context and causality. It's relatively new, about a month old. But we do take this in consideration, Luca and I, in our study about the difference between causality and non-causality. For example, if you take
Moshe, thank you. Sorry
okay.
to cut you off here, but we also still have other questions, and also we're slowly running out of time.
I guess I made my point.
Okay. Thanks. So there is another question also by Elias Galvez. Elias, if you would like to come in, and then we take those two questions or comments. If not, Elias, I can also read it out for you. So Elias was saying, given that there are many different measures of democracy, as you have mentioned, I'm curious to know why you chose the Economist's Democracy Index for this study, rather than an alternative such as one of the varieties of democracy indexes. And yeah. So please go ahead. Elias is from the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. Thanks.
Thank you, Elias. There are many democratic index, and basically I am poor statistician, but I understand there are two main definition of democracy. One is very minimalist. If your country has an election, is democratic. It's a kind of 0-1. And there is another subset that democracy is more complex. Then I choose the more complex one. I did, for instance, maybe Elias is expert on that. I use Freedom House dataset. I use a polity data, and basically the results are very similar. There is also high correlation with the other democratic index. But I choose this index because I consider a little bit more how you say composite with more details. But again, maybe in some article I will present also the other index.
And you want to comment also on Moshe's comments, or?
Yes, I think Moshe was a very interesting comments. Maybe he give for granted that there are many economists and methodological people. Maybe then maybe was sometimes complex to fully understand, not because it was not clear, but was more methodological comments. But anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. So we are now at 9:31, so we're basically at the end of our today's webinar. I can imagine there are still a good number of questions on the topic, so I would just recommend maybe reach out to Luca either via email or on the global network, and he can surely follow up on those questions. I would like now, maybe if you can all switch on your cameras for a few seconds and also put on your microphones, and then we can give Luca a nice round of applause. That would be amazing. So please switch on your cameras and also your mics. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Luca. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining. And yeah, also join us then for our next Global Network webinars. You will receive a newsletter from us next week. And otherwise also already a nice summer break for those who live on the Northern Hemisphere. Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.